WWT presents Partner Spotlight.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of WWT Presents Partner Spotlight. My name is Brian Bartell, and I will be your host today for this important topic. In an era where IT infrastructure is rapidly evolving, the shift from vertically integrated hypervisor stacks to flexible multi-ecosystem deployments is more relevant than ever. Software-defined, or SD, often is at the forefront of the evolution, offering unparalleled flexibility, scalability, and efficiency. Today, we're going to explore how Dell PowerFlex stands out in this landscape. With its unique ability to support multiple ecosystems simultaneously. We'll delve into the benefits it brings to your infrastructure investments, operational simplicity, asset reusability. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to meet our guests. I'm grateful today to be joined by Anthony Cinelli, Senior Director of Global PowerFlex Sales for Dell, and John Lochausen, Technical Solutions Architect here at Worldwide Technology. John, Anthony, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Pumped to be here.
Let's start with, Anthony, let's start with you. So, as I mentioned in the intro, software-defined, it's kind of at the forefront of this shift in data center infrastructure. Why is that? And actually, let's make this a two-part question. How about we take a step back? How about help our listeners and watchers understand, what does software-defined mean to Dell, right? What are the implications for enterprises, IT leaders? What are we here to talk about, essentially?
Yeah, for sure. Look, software-defined is one of those kind of big, broad, buzzwordy terms, if you will. And, for me, when I boil it down, what it effectively means is taking an approach to infrastructure that relies on standard hardware building blocks that, through the power of software, enable customers to build very repeatable, very flexible, modern infrastructures that allow them to deal with all the challenge they have today around growth, around variability, and around flexibility. So it's all about using those standard building blocks and then the power of software to just add that extra layer of agility in your organization to more rapidly respond to what you need to do from an infrastructure perspective.
Okay, great. No, I appreciate that. John, how about we kind of flip a question over to you? So when we talk about modern solutions, modern storage solutions, for example, what are the key characteristics and why are these important for modern enterprises to have modern solutions?
Yeah, so to me, there are three key points that make up a modern storage solution. First up is going to be scalability, both up and out. Scale up because sometimes I just need more capacity. The amount of performance I'm getting from my system is adequate. I just need it to carry more storage. And scale out because I might need to add additional performance into an existing system. I don't want to have to acquire yet another system and have a new island of storage. I just want to have the one big block of storage I have go faster. And so node-based systems typically scale out. They also will have migration functionality that takes advantage of intra-cluster data movement, so I can provide zero disruption lifecycling of my storage system. Number two, we talked about a little bit, performance. Not that everyone needs 4 million IOPS, but the ability for a storage system to scale up to meet whatever needs I want to throw at it are absolutely key for a world of rapidly changing requirements. And then the last one that's really important is management simplicity. This could be a good web GUI, or it could be a good RESTful API. Those are things that help customers adopt and maintain the storage systems that they use in their environments.
And if I, maybe take the liberty to maybe even add on to those, right? Because I think John hit it right on the head, right? Scale out, scale up, basically flexible scaling architecture, that's table stakes. Performance, table stakes. And, I often come across that comment of, I don't need 1 million IOs. I don't have a database that runs that fast. Totally. But what's interesting about performance is to maybe look at it a different way. It's not necessarily about solving for a workload, but one of the benefits of effectively unlimited performance is it enables you as the customer to consolidate all your workloads onto a common platform and not deal with the challenges that historically come with consolidation. Things like noisy neighbor, things like balancing resources across arrays, things like, looking out for hotspots. If you can remove some of that operational pain that comes with consolidation, the value is that you can consolidate more. And if there's anything that's well proven in IT over the past 30 years, is that if I can go from 10 widgets to 2 widgets, I can typically drive up my utilization, which means I drive out a whole heck of a lot of cost, which means I also simplify because I got a lot less stuff to manage and deal with in the environment. So, that's maybe a double down for the importance of performance. And then, the two that jump out at me, which are really interesting in the current context, are the architecture being disaggregated. And that really is about flexibility. Can I disaggregate my compute from my storage so I can scale those resources independently, so I can optimize cost at every layer of the stack? Not just around, only adding storage hardware or software when I need to, but only adding compute resources when I need to. That's not only about compute hardware, but it seems like every type of software out there licenses based on core usage. So if I can disaggregate my resources to more accurately kind of keep control of the amount of cores in my environment, that has a huge impact on my ability to continue optimizing for cost. And then the last one there, which I'll highlight because, Brian, it's one of the ones you opened with, was open ecosystem. Like, it almost seems like overnight the world went from, hey, I'm just solving for a vertically integrated VMware stack, to customers becoming hyper aware to openness, to saying, yes, VMware represents a large part of my environment today and likely will continue. But there's also other ecosystems I want the flexibility to embrace, and I want to be able to do so without having to rip and replace all of my underlying infrastructure. So when you kind of put all that together, you end up with this kind of four-pronged approach of scale out, performance, disaggregation, and open ecosystem just being incredibly important to enabling customers the type of flexibility that they need from a software-defined infrastructure today.
Yeah, that, honestly, that's a great place to kind of take the next one. So, like, from that multi-ecosystem or multiple ecosystem setup, like, how does PowerFlex support that, Anthony? How, like, it's important, but like, maybe why is it important too? Can you dig into those a little bit?
No, for sure. I think one of PowerFlex's kind of unique architectural differentiators is, as a software-defined platform, it is not specific to any one hypervisor or operating system. And not only is it not specific, but it can also present storage capacity to multiple hypervisors, operating systems, containers, bare metal OSs, all at the same time, all within the same infrastructure. And there's just nothing else that can do that in the world of software defined. That is its unique secret sauce, special differentiator that's just so relevant for customers right now looking for flexibility at that layer of the stack. So the beauty of PowerFlex is you can bring in this infrastructure platform that has all those benefits that John mentioned earlier, the simplicity, the automation, the lifecycle management, and use that to deliver a great outcome for your VMware virtualized workloads. But as you look to embrace different hypervisors potentially tomorrow, that exact same infrastructure can also be leveraged for those. And as you transition between different hypervisors potentially, it enables you to do that faster because the data doesn't need to move. And that ends up being where all the gravity is, that ends up usually being the hardest part to move. So the fact that the data can stay in place is really, really interesting. The last piece maybe on this topic I'll close on is there's also like technical reasons why PowerFlex is the only software-defined platform out there that can do this. And without getting too deep into the architecture of it, what it enables is not only the ability to run with any kind of what I'll call standard hypervisor offering that's out there. It also allows it to run with hypervisors that weren't necessarily designed to run on open infrastructure. And the two latest examples of that were specific partnerships just announced. The first one between Dell and Microsoft, where PowerFlex is now the first supported storage that can be presented to the Azure Stack HCI platform, enabling customers looking to run that Azure Stack experience to get that benefit of Azure connectedness and Azure consistency, yet have the advantage of PowerFlex being decoupled. So you get the independent scale of storage, you get that very predictable, consistent, and proven enterprise performance, resiliency, and scale. So that's a really interesting capability that is now generally available with support from both Microsoft and Dell. And then the other one that's not quite available yet, but did have a joint announcement a couple months ago, is actually between Dell and Nutanix, where Nutanix came out and announced that PowerFlex will be the first external storage supported to be presented to their Acropolis hypervisor offering, where you'll now be able to take Acropolis, deploy it directly on a PowerFlex compute node, take advantage of their great automation and tooling and hypervisor offering, yet partner it with that open ecosystem, disaggregated software-defined PowerFlex infrastructure. So it just really leads to this incredibly flexible open infrastructure outcome for customers that nothing out there can mirror, whether it's a traditional kind of scale-up 3-tier storage array or other things that are software defined, which tend to be very vertically locked into one particular offering. So that's just a superpower right now that's resonating in the market in incredible fashion these days.
I think the flexibility that our customers are looking for, greater flexibility in their platforms. They know what they need today, but they're also looking out 5 or maybe 10 years in the future at where they think they're going to be. And they don't want to be locked into a platform that doesn't give them room to move down the road. Whether they're, maybe they're all on premises today looking to put something out in public cloud. They want something that will help them get there when they need it. So flexibility is absolutely critical for our customer base.
Those are all really good points. Appreciate it. Anthony, back to what you were kind of mentioning about, the flexibility. I'm used to a world where wanting all of this flexibility equates to a lot of complication, a lot of planning, it usually isn't very simple. One of the other really, really great points that customers can benefit from PowerFlex is the simplicity of operation, reducing complexity for customers. Can you dive into that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I'll actually steal and double down on the two items John mentioned earlier. Scale out architecture and automated lifecycle management. Look, when you want flexibility, right? Actually, let me frame it up this way. Customers, for the most part, have had two primary approaches to deploying infrastructure. They're 3-tier, compute, storage networking, storage array, or hyper-converged. And hyper-converged was valuable because it was simple, right? Add nodes, scale out, grow, but the downfalls of that are it's locked into a particular hypervisor offering for the most part. And you can't really separate out the resources, which tends to run into TCO issues with larger kind of customers at scale. 3-tier is super flexible. But to your point, in order to gain all that flexibility, you end up having to take on a lot of operational complexity because, as John mentioned earlier, you buy a storage box. The minute that box starts to fill up, you got to buy another storage box. And those are two silos. There's no sharing in between there. If you want some of this stuff to take advantage of some of that stuff, you need a human to move the data around. And we don't want to do that. Now put yourself in the shoes of a big customer. You don't have one box. You don't have 2 boxes. You might have 200 of these boxes. And you start to think about how to evenly utilize those resources. You can't. And we're nowhere close to some magical AI being able to do that either. So the net outcome of that is one of two things happen. either you end up taking on a bunch of operational risks trying to move all the data around in order to gain the flexibility, or what usually does happen is you just end up with wasted capacity, wasted resources everywhere. Some systems are running hot, others are running underutilized, doesn't matter, right? So you just end up with a tremendous amount of waste because to eliminate that waste is just too complex operationally.
Yeah.
This is where the scale out architecture becomes so important, right? Being able to say, I'm not limited to a box, right? I don't need to decide, do I need the small, medium, or large? But being able to incrementally grow node based and scale as you need to allows you to drive that consolidation. So instead of having all these individual silos to try and manage, you now end up with a much more consolidated infrastructure approach to manage. And because of that performance we talked about earlier, you're also eliminating the overhead of things like noisy neighbor and performance load management. So it really enables, by introducing a true scale out architecture, really simplifies operations of the data center because it eliminates the silo problem. That brings us to the next piece that, again, John highlighted, this idea of automation, lifecycle management. Because we're now in a world with PowerFlex where it's standard building block hardware, x86 hardware, with software running on top of it, the ability to patch, update, and lifecycle every element of that environment becomes a whole heck of a lot easier because it's now just driven via software in repeatable blueprint approaches that are all natively built into the process. And the things that make PowerFlex really interesting and more than what I call just a storage array, and because it won't only do that patching and life cycling at the storage level, but you can also have PowerFlex do that at the compute level as well, where it will deploy your compute hosts. It will apply known good states of BIOS and firmware. It will life cycle and patch BIOS and firmware. And if you're running ESX on the environment, it will also deploy, patch, lifecycle, and update ESX as well. So there's just a tremendous amount of flexibility to take that software-defined, automated operational approach, if you will, not only utilize it at the storage layer, but also bring it further up the stack as well.
It's like the management simplicity of hyperconverged with the flexibility of 3-tier.
Bingo. John just said in like 8 words what took me 800 to say. So thank you.
I'm out.
Well done. Yeah, no, those are really, really good salient points. John, since you're back up, let's throw one your way. So obviously cost effectiveness, that's something we're kind of trying to touch on here is how do we ensure that we're, making the best use of the infrastructure? How do we ensure that, the customers are not ending up with silos and all this kind of, management overhead and that kind of stuff? How can WWT kind of assist customers in sort of evaluating kind of that cost efficiency of their solutions? Like how do we typically kind of engage with the customer on that?
Sure. So it's a multi-part question. Let me pick that one apart a bit. So cost effectiveness is to me, it's 2 components. It's the initial acquisition cost of my system. That's going to be mainly driven by performance requirements as well as capacity. Then we've got ongoing costs. So what does it take to operate this thing from day 2 to day year 3 or 4? So, the day-to-day, I've probably got simple moves, adds, changes. I'm going to be provisioning new hosts, allocating storage to hosts. That's going to be done by someone through a really nice web GUI, or it's going to be done through automation workflows. So back to one of my earlier points, the automation, the API needs to be good to enable customers to do this stuff simply. And then that makes repeatable actions that I don't have to think about ever again. The other thing that's particularly painful in the storage world is lifecycle operations. And by that, I'm specifically talking about migrations. When I was a storage admin, we used to plan 9 months to migrate from one array to the next for hundreds of terabytes at the time. And while you're doing that, you're also trying to keep the business running. So you've got this moving target while you're also trying to pick things up from one system and move them onto another. So node-based architectures have a superpower in that you can usually bring new nodes in, let the cluster rebalance its capacity, and then tell it to remove the old ones, and it will go rebalance off of those and onto your new ones, and all of your attached hosts are none the wiser. We talked also about flexibility. So requirements change over time. So to make something cost effective, I need to have a system that will adapt with me as my needs change. Maybe today I've got a simple, 50 terabyte requirement. Then 6 months from now, someone says, hey, we need to start planning for rack level failure, which is a new requirement. And if I don't have something that can move with me, now I've got to go through a whole storage evaluation process and pick a product, implement it, when if I had something that was flexible enough, I could have just had that from the start. So like I said a minute ago, our customers are looking for options, whether they need them or not today.
Yeah.
As far as what WWT can do to help our customers, we've got a few facilities at our disposal. So we have a very strong data center practice. We can consult on storage, servers, data center infrastructure, backup, cyber protection, anywhere in between. So we can help them that way. Additionally, when they want to see these products in action, we have the Advanced Technology Center that customers can use to prove out solutions. We can evaluate all the functions. Customers can get in and watch the evaluation happen or do it themselves. And then in addition to evaluating the features, we can also, from an efficiency perspective, monitor the system heavily, even getting down to things like power draw at the outlet level.
Okay.
Hopefully that all made sense.
Yeah, no, it did. And really, honestly, like I go back to thinking about, I know customers often know maybe what they need to know today or what they need today. They may think they know what they need tomorrow, but, to your point of like, it needs to be flexible and adaptable with them and as their needs change, right? That's something that's constant. We all think we have an idea what the future looks like, but very often we're wrong. So you need something that's that flexible. So really good point there.
Totally. And maybe one kind of thing to add on, and this is like a personal crusade that I have, where like everyone in the world of storage is always like dollar per terabyte. And they're looking at like their acquired cost per terabyte. Like, what's it cost me to buy a terabyte? And I'm on this crusade to focus on what is my cost per utilized terabyte. And the thing that jumps out at me is this one, large customer I was engaged with, and they were very proud that they were buying, enterprise storage at, pick a number, $1 a gigabyte. And they were very proud of that. And then when you went and looked in their environment across, the 86 dual controller arrays they had, their average utilization was 32%. So it feels great that you're acquiring it for $1, but your cost of utilizing that very inefficient siloed architecture is like 3 to 4 times that. So you actually have a very, very high cost of storage. And again, this kind of, it's architectural. It's nothing that customer's doing wrong. They got incredibly talented operations people. It's architecture.
Yeah.
The only way to address that is moving towards a scale-out, consolidated architecture, which drives up your utilization percentage, which has a direct impact on the number of terabytes you need to buy, therefore reducing that overall spend of storage.
Yep. Good points. So we've talked a little bit about kind of what WWT can do, and we're obviously on the call together. Anthony, from your perspective, Dell WWT partnership, obviously we've got a long-standing partnership. In your words, what's the enhanced value, we can particularly kind of help customers with, from a modern solution perspective? What kind of partnership do we provide, that customer?
Yeah, I think if I kind of sum up like WWT's value to me as Dell in 2 words: trust, execution. And what do I mean by those 2 words? Look, your customers trust you guys. They trust you with some of their biggest architectural and infrastructure decisions, strategies, and investments. And your customers also tend to be some of the largest, most impactful organizations on the planet. You carry a tremendous amount of trust when those organizations are facing decisions on how they want to do things going forward. We feel we have a very compelling platform with PowerFlex, and frankly, if it's a platform that you guys trust and your customers trust you, that's a huge value add for me, right? And trying to win customers over to the capability and viability of the platform.
Yeah.
So that's one. Then the other one is execution, right? John mentioned it. You guys have expertise and practices in a number of different areas. You also have made very major investments within your ATC, where there's a whole lot of different PowerFlex running there, which gives you the opportunity to give customers the firsthand experience to engage with the platform and take some of these value props we talk about or have pretty slides around and make them real for customers to get hands-on and see those architectural capabilities in action so they can more directly correlate them to the problems in the data center that they're trying to solve. And that's just all about execution. So again, it's all about trust and execution. That for me is why WWT is just such a strong and valuable partner for me.
Yeah, those are two really important points, Anthony. Thanks for bringing those to our attention. John, let's actually dig into that a little bit more with the ATC piece at least, right? So, what kind of projects do we have going on, in the ATC, or what do we have just in general, WWT wide? How about from your perspective, how can you highlight kind of our partnership?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, the ATC is built for our customers to try out new gear, prove it out so that when they make an acquisition, they go into it with complete confidence that it will do what it says it's going to do. We had a customer this year do some IP storage, IP-based block storage, with which they worked with Dell and other OEMs to test out their platforms and figure out which one was going to make sense for them going forward. We also do a lot of pre-release work with Dell. We were a part of PowerStore Prime. We were part of the PowerScale F910 beta, PowerMax code, and soon looking to start the next iteration of PowerFlex code. So our goal with all of these is to improve our combined customers' experience, looking for just making the platform easy to use for them, as well as test out new features and make sure they absolutely work. So, depending on testing, we've tested the features, we've tested documentation, and then I mentioned already interface usability, making sure that the interface is as simple to use and intuitive as possible.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, you really touched on some of the important things from like staying sharp technically, right? So you talk about betas, you talk about, participating with customers and testing and proof of concepts and stuff like that within the ATC. That starts to kind of take us down the road of making sure that, we're staying on top of things technically. You mentioned our practices in the past and how technically we understand the platforms and the products. Those are great ways to ensure that we're staying sharp from a technical aspect, with the customer, alongside our customers. Anthony, that also leads me kind of into that next question that maybe I want to ask you. We talk about betas; those are, beta testing and that kind of stuff is pre-release. It's sort of forward-looking, right? It's what's coming. What's the future look like for PowerFlex for you, right? Broad scope.
World domination. No.
Yeah.
A little bit, but look, we're at a really, really interesting time right now with PowerFlex because there's a couple things that's always done well. And it's the thing we've talked about, right? Like scale out, disaggregation, performance. Like those are things that have literally been proven for years in some of the world's largest data center environments in places like banking and healthcare, broader financial services. Like its capabilities there are unquestioned, which is exciting. As we look forward, where we're going with PowerFlex is how do we continue to round it out to truly continue being that consolidation platform, whether it's optimizations to its data layout to continue driving down the cost of acquisition to go along with its benefits around utilization. Whether it's things like continuing to advance the level of data services to take on all the wide variety of workloads that customers need to solve for. There's a great journey with PowerFlex, and the beauty of this is when we come out with some new, cool, exciting release with PowerFlex, you don't got to like go buy the new array in order to get it. You don't got to like, oh, I got to rip out all my hardware and put in the brand new stuff. Literally, as we get to like a major release of PowerFlex, a customer who went and bought it like 4 years ago, that exact same hardware they're running, because remember, go back to those standard x86 building blocks, that same exact hardware is usable for all the brand new software enablement and iterations that we're bringing to market. So it continues to reiterate that core value of why software-defined infrastructure, because now you are decoupling your software advancements from the hardware lifecycle, which is really not something that's ever been done in the world of storage. It's always required, a migration, a forklift upgrade, a controller swap, like stuff that involves a lot of humans as worker bees, like running around the data center. By moving towards that software-defined infrastructure capability, it really helps solve some of those core fundamental challenges of operating storage and infrastructure at scale. This idea of embracing new and latest developments and code is just the latest example of that.
Yeah. You mentioned example, Anthony. Let's wrap it up with like maybe some examples. People love hearing how does this solve, or how has this solved a particular person's or customer's challenges, right? So do you have like a nice success story that comes to mind, or something where you can kind of point to and say, here's a challenge that a particular customer might have had, and here's how implementing this infrastructure has helped solve that challenge?
Yeah, I could go all day on that topic, but John, not to put you on the spot, but any that come to mind from you of all the various projects that WWT and Dell have worked on together around PowerFlex.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind first would be a US-based manufacturing customer. Early days of COVID, their storage system was not keeping up with their demands, and PowerFlex sounded like it did what they needed it to do. They just needed to prove it. So working with our Dell counterparts, they quickly shipped in a system. We got it installed in the ATC, threw a bunch of workload at it over a couple weeks. The customer said, "Yup, that's good. It does what it says it's going to do." And ever since then, that has been their storage platform of choice.
Right.
And that's just one example. We could go on and on, whether it's manufacturing, I already mentioned healthcare, banking, financial services, retail. Energy is another big one. We've officially reached a point where I actually don't think there's a single vertical we don't touch with PowerFlex. And whether it's, now frame up customers two ways, whether it's a workload problem of I just have this one workload that's really driving me nuts, or you're looking for an approach to my data center's too complex. How do I consolidate and simplify? PowerFlex is an answer in both of those scenarios. Mm-hmm. And we've got a whole number of examples, whether it's use case driven or what I'll call architectural simplification driven. Chances are there's a case study out there that we have that mirrors what you're trying to achieve as a customer. So, if you're looking for more detail on that, you have a situation that you're trying to solve, reach out to your WWT account team, engage your Dell account team, and that's something we can walk through in detail and hopefully showcase how PowerFlex can be a platform that can drive a ton of flexibility, allow you to embrace open ecosystem thinking while getting on that path to a true modern scale-out, software-defined infrastructure platform.
Yeah, well said. Thank you both. I really appreciate it. Anthony, John, you guys were excellent, super informative, really helpful. Really appreciate your feedback and your thoughts on all the questions. Love the examples and the things you guys threw out there. Thank you to our audience. We appreciate you joining us for another episode of WWT Presents Partner Spotlight. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
all.